Hello, everyone. Good morning to everybody that is online for today's professional workshop series organized by the Office of Education Quality Assurance and our Mirai partners. I'd like to recognize the presence of the Director General, Office of Education Quality Assurance online, in person of Mrs. Abiola Serikia. Good morning, ma'am. Also, good morning to Miss Christine, all the way from the UAE, Mirai partners, and also a co-facilitator for today's workshop. Good morning to Ms. Titilayo Oshobu, also one of our organizers of today's workshop. All school leaders present online, good morning. All distinguished directors from Office of Education Quality Assurance, evaluators present online, good morning. Every single person online, good morning to you all. Welcome to another Tuesday. It's another day for an exciting workshop. And today's topic or today's module promises to be very exciting, innovative, and educative. So just grab your pen and paper ready, as it promises to be full of knowledge. We've had 2 modules in this series. So this series is all about the quality of leadership. So we've had instructional coaching 1 and 2. So today is the 3rd module in this series, in series 3. And as I call on DG to give us an overview of what we expect of today's module. DG Ma, if the DG can hear us. Okay. I saw the DG online just a few minutes ago, so probably she's trying to connect with another device. So as we wait for the DG to get connected, please could we have your name, your school where you're representing, you introduce yourself for about a minute or 2 in the chat box before we get started. Thank you. Please do know that the past module that we've had could be downloaded from our website, www.lagoslearnstogether.com. Under the tab PD with the DG, you can find all the past series online. You can find it. You can also see it on our YouTube channel at oeqalagos.com. I'd even like to acknowledge those that joined through the YouTube. We see you. We see that you're there communicating, liking our post. Please do share the link with other people, and then please do like our posts on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Miss Christine, you're most welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Ms. Fazia, do you mind running the slides for us?
Oh, very well. Okay.
Thank you.
I just gave a minute or 2 for people to introduce themselves so that when we start the workshop proper, we won't see people popping in their names when they're supposed to be doing the activity.
Okay, sounds good. Is the DG here?
Yes, she was online. I saw her online, but probably she's trying to connect from another device.
Got it. So, okay.
So for dear participants, please do let us know if you can see the screen, if you can hear us, anything, please just put it in the chat box so that we can address it immediately. Please do know that we're stream living. This is being streamed live on our OEQA YouTube channel at OEQA at OEQA Lagos. I'll be posting the link in the chat box in a minute.
Okay, Ms. Fausia, should we get started?
Okay, we could. Okay. I can see the just waiting for the DJ's address. For her to just give a welcome address, then we can get started. And I can see she's back online.
Perfect.
DJ, good morning, ma. We're waiting for your welcome address into today's workshop and the overview.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mrs. Nasser Gatsi. I was disconnected
DJ.
for a few moments, it seems. Okay, so today's topic is based on community engagement and partnership for quality assurance. And I want to welcome all of our attendees here today. Thank you for attending the various workshops that we've been giving over the past few weeks. I believe this is number 11 or 12 in the 3 separate series. And we're really going to be talking today about community engagement and partnership. Some people may wonder, why does this even matter when we're talking about quality assurance and when we're even talking about schooling? We recognize that children are part of larger communities. We recognize that our teachers and all our staff are part of larger communities. And as a result of that, we really do need to understand the different things that our community members are going through to be able to proffer better learning solutions for them when they walk into the doors of our schools. So it's always great to ensure that community engagement and partnerships is not just a nice to have. It's actually something that you have been intentional about from the administrative level and even from the teacher level when talking about the parent and our family engagement and all. So without much further ado, we will dig in to the ways of working. Okay, I just realized that my video wasn't on. Okay, so remember that we are to be present and we are to avoid distractions. Please also remember that these sessions are going to be available on YouTube and that all of the materials, including the PowerPoint deck, will be available on lagoslearnstogether.com. We want to ensure that we participate and that we're using the chat for questions and for constructive comments. We want to further to that, make sure we're doing the activities. We would definitely benefit more when we're all fully engaged into the different components of this workshop. We'll know what works, we'll know what doesn't work, and what may need some tweaking when we want to cascade this to our different stakeholders.
Morning, everyone. Oops.
Are you here? Okay, yes, she's
here. I am. Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was muted. Now my camera is off, and I shall tell you why.
That's okay.
It is actually 4:10 in the morning in Philadelphia.
Oh, back in the US now. That's
yes,
true.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let me just run through our agenda briefly. I can see it's quite small, so I will read this through to you. So we've had the welcome. I'm going to go through a brief icebreaker and the objectives. We're going to then talk a little bit about some ways to build community, and then the link between community building and pedagogy or improved learning outcomes. Then we're going to run through some practical ideas and strategies, and we'll be looking for quite a bit of your input during that part of the program. Then we'll move on to how to incorporate this into community partnerships, into action planning, or into your school development plans. And finally, if we have time, we will wrap up with some Q&A. So, Ms. Fausia, could you please move to the next slide? Okay. How would you describe your school community? This is the icebreaker. Can you press forward on this just so we get the text up? It was one of my colleagues who did these slides, and she uses more animation than I do. There we go. Okay. So why is building a school community so important? We want you to actually start by just describing your school community. What does it look like? Are you a big school? Are you a small school? Are you a primary school? Is it a playful place? Is it a serious place? What does it feel like? What is the sense somebody would get when they walk into the school? And then what does it sound like? What might you hear when you walk into the school? And I'll give you an example from a school that I visited last week in Accra. I would have described the school as a small school with under 100 primary students. What does it feel like? It felt like a happy, comfortable place. The children and the teachers seemed truly at ease. And what did it sound like? What I could hear were more students talking than teachers talking. So I heard the voices of happy, engaged students. So that's how I would have described this school that I went into. We want you to use the chat, describe your school. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what does it sound like?
We'll be expecting comments in the chat box right about now. So as the Gigi said, we want everybody to please do the activities. So please let us have your comments.
And DG, perhaps you could do this too, thinking about a school that you've recently been in. It could be your children's school, or it could be a school that you've had the opportunity to visit. I'm going to post the response that I wrote in the chat. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's responses as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there's so many schools that we visit in this work that we do. If I had to think about a particular school, though, I would say it looks, like very rectangular. A lot of the public schools have a certain type of structure that most of them do have. So if I had to think of shapes, rectangular, sharp edges, very open, very large, many children. I'm thinking of a public school. In terms of what it feels like, I would say it feels like, what it feels like. I think it feels serious. It feels serious. It feels, I think, especially during this, after COVID, schools do feel a little bit more relaxed than they typically have been. So it feels serious, but still somewhat relaxed, a little bit more relaxed than it typically feels. And in terms of what it sounds like, I would say I hear a lot of teachers talking, teachers telling students what to do in terms of instruction. And another sound that I hear, maybe students within their transitions going up the stairs. So maybe they're moving from one classroom to another.
Thank you, DG. So let's try to see some responses in the chat. So we see Mr. Kareem Ibrahim from Lajo. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Community Junior Secondary School. He said it feels interesting to be there. Great. I'd love to hear more about that, more information, either in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and share.
I thought I saw somebody raise their hands that wanted to give their contribution orally, but maybe it was an error. Okay, so we're still expecting responses in the chat box. We want to know how you describe your school community. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what does it sound like? Briefly, please.
So no more introducing yourself unless you're doing it with the icebreaker, please. Would you find parents in the school? Would you find vendors in the schoolyard? Who else might you see? Right? Let's think about these types of questions. When teachers have their babies with them. I mean, that's something I noticed in a couple of schools I visited recently. You may not introduce yourself, folks, unless you are answering these questions. What does your school look like? What does it feel like? And what does it sound like? Thank you, Mr. Sada.
Disconnected there, Ms. Christine. Thanks for taking it up.
That's okay. I think we'll try to encourage everyone to answer these in the chat while we move on. I'm just going to copy the question into the chat. And thank you to those of you who have tried to answer this. Please, Ms. Fazia, can we move on to the next slide? Thank you, Ms. Mariam. I love that. A humble school in an environment that feels welcoming, and that sounds great to me. What a beautiful response. Okay, our objectives today. Participants shall review and assess their community engagement ideas to fit within their overall learning strategy. I would make the assumption based on what I read from Ms. Mariam, for example, that the learning strategy is one that is participatory and inclusive of children. Thank you, Mr. Sada, except for during break time when there's a lot of noise. That is exactly what we would expect. And then the second objective is that participants will learn strategies to engage with community partners to support education transformation through leveraging complementary competencies and knowledge. Now, I will say this is the, oh, okay, thank you for sharing the comment about the floods too. It's quite helpful and interesting. This is an abridged version of this workshop. So if you are interested in more case studies and even more tips, you will find it in the full workshop guidelines and deck, which will be on Lagos Learns Together. Let's move on to the next slide, and thank you for your comments. Keep them coming. Okay, and then I believe the next slide. Now we're going to focus in on building community. Why does this matter from a pedagogical standpoint? And with that, I'm turning it over to the DG.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? I've had to make sure that I have multiple internet sources today, which is very unlike the norm, but that's okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, just give me one moment. Okay. Okay, so in terms of building a community, like I had mentioned briefly earlier on, it's very important to think through the different components of what makes this larger community that the school is functioning in, that the school is present in, and that actually makes up the school, right? Teachers, staff, they're also parents, right? So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways in which our community members are also interwoven. So we have our parents, we have our community partners, and within community partners, we have private businesses, we have private entities, corporate Nigeria, and then we also have government, right? So what does this all have to do with, student learning at the end of the day? So if students are to succeed in schools, then teachers must foster partnerships with families and with schools. Okay, this is not to say that we're not also going to do this at the level of administration as to what type of culture the administration has put in place to ensure that teachers are able to do this comfortably. But there is some onus of responsibility on part of the teacher also. Okay, so this is now more than ever more vital, a strong connection between school-based learning and students learning at home is essential for success during remote instruction. So yes, in many ways, Lagos State, for instance, we've sort of slowed down on the at-home learning, remote learning, because there's no longer lockdown. But what we do know as a result of COVID, when COVID just started, and even up till now, that the need to be flexible more than ever is really important. So even though we are back to school physically, and in many cases, there's no longer staggering or no longer entirely remote learning, it's important to also maintain this flexibility. And what does this mean as we build our community partnerships? So public-private educational partnerships are contractual relationships between government and private sector entity. And as government, we've seen that in various ways. So I know at some point, the Ministry of Education, for instance, had, the Support Our Schools initiative during Fashola's time. And then we also have other type of public-private partnerships, for instance, through Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, where they have the educational loans through First Bank, First EDU, I believe that's what it's called, right? So contractual relationships that have terms and references between governments and private sector entities. And they are huge catalysts for systemic change, right? So I know that most of you here are not government. Most of you here are school owners, right? But really being able to provide an enabling environment at the government level is crucial to ensuring that your efforts at the school-based level are able to be successful. Okay, so PPEPs mobilize individuals, organizations, and communities tapping into the power of education. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So when we're looking at how we're able, this is honing down a little bit. So we've talked briefly about the overarching engagement of families and communities, but when we're able to bring it down, how would this actually happen? Okay, so there is a framework for teaching by Charlotte Danielson. And in fact, this is a major component when it comes to the criteria for what an effective teacher is when it comes to professional responsibilities. So it's not necessarily something that's separate from what the teacher should be doing. Again, I want to hone in on the fact that we recognize that in order for teachers to be able to successfully do this, government entities need to engage with community members. Schools need to be able to engage with the community in meaningful ways and provide that enabling environment so that teachers can directly do this at their level. So how are families and communities engaged in the learning and development of students? So we have, for example, teachers communicating respectfully with families and community members to further academic success of students. So what may this look like? At the very low level, it could be something like a newsletter, right? It could be something like a very simple newsletter that goes out to your parents. I know there are many apps like Class Dojo and all of that. So how are we able to communicate with families? It could also be something as simple as open day that we typically have in our schools, right? So how are we able to communicate? This really more is with families. How does that extend to community? Okay, can we look through the various types of resources that we have in our local community, in our local government, in our state, and bring those things to the classroom? even if it's something like bringing professionals to speak to students and to mentor them, okay? Another way is, teachers engaging families and communities, demonstrating a clear value for the role they play in student learning and personal development within the school. So really connecting the family component and the community component, and really letting them see that they actually can make impact in the classroom. Okay, so it is more obvious oftentimes when it comes to families that if there's more parental involvement and engagement, that typically we see that students do better. But what could this mean for businesses, right? What could this mean for businesses? So for instance, if there's a medical facility, a private medical facility that, decides to maybe do eye checks for students in a school, could that actually also further bring business to them? That's just one way in which it can provide value, one of many ways in which it can provide value. Another is also having trust within that community, because a community is accustomed to these set of businesses doing something for them, directly for their students or directly for their parents, okay? So it's not just a one-way relationship. We really need to be able to, show what that value chain is able to bring. Can you still hear me and see me? That's my alternate internet working, I hope.
We can speak and hear and see you.
Okay, great. Okay, so student families and community members are key decision makers and active participants in the active life of students. And we have to really be able to see teachers as allies in the student development and success. So it's not the case that parents are just coming and saying, I've paid X amount for my child to go to this school, and everything that I want should happen. Not necessarily so, okay? We need to see the families of students and community members need to see teachers as allies. They need to see them as key decision makers and active participants, as opposed to passive participants in a student's development and success. And I know that depending on your school you go to, this is not always the case. So it's just good to be able to tie all of these things together. And it's not something that is automatic. It is something that the school would really have to work on being intentional to figure out, where their point of entry should be. So developing some sort of strategy as to how they can get this done within their school and how long it would take to get to these goals. Next slide. So I talked about the Danielson framework, and that even embedded in the Danielson framework for the framework for teaching that engages and evaluates teacher effectiveness. Engaging families and community is huge, and it's embedded there. It's not even an add-on, it's something that is explicitly stated. So let's look at what the elements of success would be for this component. Number one, respect and cultural competence. Teachers interact with families and the community in ways that respect their values and cultural backgrounds. So for instance, a teacher that is working in a school in Ekwe or Makuku, how are they able to interact with the families and communities in a way that they actually recognize that I respect, the type of work that the community members do in this in this local government or in this area of Lagos, right? It will be definitely different than someone that maybe lives in New York City, okay? It definitely will be. So that is being intentional If you work in maybe in an international school that has students from all over the world, then you need to bring part of that into your interactions with your family members, okay? That is not to say everyone will be treated in a blanket way, one size fits all, absolutely not. But that when we're talking about cultural competence, you are going above and beyond to recognize that there may be a gap and that maybe there's a way in which you can fill it to help parents and family members and community members better engage and be active in the school community. I know for some people, it could be even during the open day, maybe it's even having a translator, right? So if you know that maybe a lot of the parents or family members in that community maybe speak Pidgin or they speak Igbo, then maybe even something as simple as having a translator present would be helpful. Number 2, learning community ethos and values. What matters to that community? What matters to the people there? Okay, so learning experiences and environments are extensions of the community. And how are you able to uphold those values? By creating a shared vision of student success. What type of things matter, okay, to that particular community? Then obviously standards and curriculum, right? As teachers, this is important, and it's not left out when engaging families and communities. But if you're not able to effectively communicate this to the families that the children come from, to the community members that are supposed to be partners, are they really able to support your efforts? Okay, so establish structures and processes to keep families informed about the instructional program and bring the community into the decision-making process. Sometimes this could be informed formally, like town halls. Sometimes it could be community newsletters, letting people know maybe your arts program in the school, plays coming up, whatever it is that you're doing, so that they're systematically brought in to the school, to the learning environment. Then number 4, engagement in learning experiences. Teachers connect students out of school learning and lives to their efforts in school and take the lead in forming partnerships and relationships to strengthen those connections. So what matters to our children and to our community members outside of school? You know, some people are, I'm not one to, I'm not really into football, you know, so please don't stone me for that. But some people really are, you know, when you talk about Ronaldo and all these things. So when you see that maybe if there was a big game that occurred over the weekend or something, how are you able to bring what happens outside of their classroom or outside? How are you able to bring it in? How are you able to bring it into maybe math problems, right? How are you able to bring it in terms of student writing, science, this simple type of maybe inventions that they see day to day, even if they're not, you know, very high tech? How are you able to bring those learning experience outside? How are you able to bring it inside? So at this point, I want you to just take a minute first before we go into the engagement and just skim through these 4 elements of success when it comes to engaging families and communities. Then within the chat, I want you to describe what these 4 statements look like in your school context. What does respect and cultural competence look like in your own school context? Maybe further to that, with the subject that you teach, it may be different from teacher to teacher. So for each of these, I want you to use the chat and describe what these 4 statements look like within your school context. Christine, I think would 3 minutes be sufficient?
I think so. And actually what I was going to suggest is, why don't you, this is for the participants. So I'm suggesting to the participants to select one. What one of these elements of success do you believe you do well? And what does that look like in your school?
Okay, that's definitely another one. That may be easier for people
might be easier. So
quickly
because,
do.
you know, some things are much easier to describe. Some might be slightly newer concepts. While people are writing in the chat, I will add that one of the things I absolutely love when I go to schools anywhere in the world is the football conversation. You know, I was just in Lagos, last week or the week before, and what is the name of Miss Fauziet's school?
Miss, I've even forgotten. Anyone here can help with it. That's the primary school, right? The Subeb school.
Oh, Ebenezer Church Primary School. And I love that you can walk into a classroom and say, all right, so who's your team? And almost every child will have a team that they support. And
they must now.
Passionate about that too. I was surprised by the number of Chelsea fans.
And I would say it's definitely a conversation starter anywhere in this Lagos. I'm probably the only one that doesn't have a team chosen.
We'll have to work on that with you, DJ.
We definitely do have to work on it, I'm sure.
So pick the one you do best, right? Pop it into the chat and then explain what that looks like in your context. This is your opportunity to not be humble, get your brag on, as we say, and share what you do well and what it looks like.
Miss Christine, do I have to call someone or do we just wait for comments in the chat box?
Sorry, so DG suggested, and I agree with this, we give people 3 minutes to share their context, or sorry, the example of what they do well and what it looks like in their school context. So for example, it could be engaging families and communities through standards and curriculum by sending out newsletters or having, you know, a monthly curriculum Zoom meeting. Or it could be that you do a great job of making connections to students out of school learning, and you do that through units on topics of interest to children. That might be the case, for example, in you know, an IB school or even in a British curriculum school. You know, if you are a school that feels you do the learning community ethos and values well, maybe you run programs to support the well-being of the family in the community, or you understand which of your families may have specific needs and try to get them support in different ways.
Okay, I'm not sure if I've really seen any. Okay, I think I've seen one. Is it just me? The school management committee. Okay.
I know somebody else has shared. That's great.
But I know you all do more than this. So I know that you call parents, you let them know what's going on. I know you send them WhatsApp messages when you don't hear from them in a while. There are many things that we actually naturally do. We don't even realize that we're doing it. So sometimes bringing a framework along forces you to consider what you have already been doing and where it fits. But once we're able to do that, I'm sure the answers will be coming. Okay. Some of you have had banks and private entities build maybe help with classrooms, help with toilets, donate face masks. Christine, another thing I think also is because the onus for this, for the Danielson framework, is on the teacher. And that may be a little different in this context, where typically it is the administration that does those things. Maybe not when it comes to the parents in the classroom, but with the community, it typically is the administration. So not to say it's a bad thing, like I said, everyone has their role to play, but what we are trying to do is offer an extension to that by bringing to surface this this framework for teachers. Okay, so how might teachers, do this? What may it look like? So it's okay if it hasn't really been done, because maybe you can't based on the administration of your school, and no one has ever, maybe you've never really thought about it. But what may it look like? I think that's really more where we're trying to sort of also open that up a little bit, what that would look like at the teacher level.
So I think what we can do is actually go on to the next slide, because what we'll have are some more practical suggestions there. If you're typing, please continue to type your example into the chat. But I think we'll move on to the next slide.
Yes, great idea.
Awesome. Now, DJ, this one was, the next slide, and you can keep hitting next until we get the examples here. Ooh, the formatting is a little awkward. Apologies for that. DG, do you want to take this one, or would you like me to take this one?
Yeah, I got it. So awesome. Typically what we try to do with these workshops, we know that they're virtual, but we know that by providing these materials, you may be able to do it. We want you to also be able to do it in person if that is what that's what you need, right? But we've sort of made it such that if you're doing it virtual, you can do it the way we're doing it, hopefully even better. And that even if you're doing it physically too, you have all that you need. We want to make sure that we're giving you tangible things you can apply immediately. So if we're to look at the different practical ideas and strategies for how this may look, like I said, some of you are doing these things already. You're doing these things already, but you may not have sort of fit it into the framework. So something like number one, make individual contact with every parent or family. This doesn't have to be every day. You can choose how this is to be done, maybe at the beginning of the term, maybe midway through, however way works. We definitely don't want you to feel overburdened because DJ has said you should be calling parents. No. Okay, so making individual contact with every parent stroke family member. Then, and this is also to establish a communication plan which includes their priorities, preferences for communication. So this typically should actually be done in the beginning. I don't know what happened to the sharing of the screen, but this typically should be done in the beginning because some people are better at phone call. Some people are better physically. They want to see you face to face. Some people like WhatsApp, some people like text message, email, and all. So it's good for you to know how people prefer, for you to communicate with them. Then based on these individual responses on a survey or whatever have you, using Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, you can use something like that, very easy. It's something that maybe one person can create and anyone can just click on it and they fill it and you have all the information at the back end. I typically prefer these type of tools as opposed to have it handwritten because maybe you can send the form home, the form can get lost, maybe you don't understand someone's handwriting and all of that. But if that is what works, then by all means do that. But if it's possible, sometimes it's better to be able to collate the data when you have an electronic tool like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms to create documentation and be able to track home or family preferences, okay? That may impact participation and learning. So for instance, you may have a situation where depending on the community, you may have a situation where family members are maybe nomadic, depending, maybe they're moving around often based on their work, especially if you live very far the riverine and all that. So I'm not saying that you do that for them, but it's good to know. You may know that already in your mind, but it's good to have these things documented in case there's a change. Or if there's a particular parent that's really busy and maybe very early morning or very late evening is the best time to reach them. So maybe the time that works for everyone else may not work for that parent, So you want to sort of know where those special circumstances exist, and you won't know unless you ask them, okay? So like I said, also, you want to make sure you know their resource level also and what their preferences are. Some people say, I don't want anything internet. Send me the paper, I will write, I will sign. That is okay too. If you want to then type it after, you can do that for your own record purposes. You also want to provide clear, consistent access to daily, weekly schedules, right? You want them to know, okay, this is what the expectation is of your child this week. This is what your child is working on this week. So could it be that you're just sending them, it could be a short text message. It could be a newsletter, assignment. This is the project that is due at this time. Make sure they do it, They want a seamless experience. Parents are very busy. If there's one thing I've taken from my very early days in teaching, so for those of you that may know me well, you'll know that I got involved in the teaching profession by mistake. I never intended on being a teacher, and I joined a program where we were charged with becoming change makers in the classroom. So the onus was actually on us, very young teacher, 21-year-old, on making impact. And part of the training we got was that parents don't have time for you. They're working 3 jobs, 4 jobs. This is in the US, obviously. They're working, they don't have time. So knowing that parents are really busy, how will you fill in that gap? How will you meet them where they are? So I sort of personally, that is how I've always approached my own teaching. That's not the same experience that everyone has, but you still want to have the ability to do that in the event that you need it. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're thinking about what works for the families to the best of your ability. Then last but not the least, you want to be able to help families and caregivers learn to navigate online tools or platforms. I know not everyone has access to, a learning management system, Microsoft Teams and all that. So could it be that you're even going to you're going to maybe record a small video or even send a link? These things are even online. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe you can send a a link to all parents. So people that are embarrassed, they don't know how to use it, they don't need to tell on themselves, but you send them on that, okay, we're moving more to this online thing. This is a tutorial on how to use, this online platform that we're using. Something very simple. You want to be able to just help them. And then you want to be able to keep track of how they're doing. You don't want people to not use it. Your efforts are wasted, right? So you want to be able to keep tabs, and you want to understand the reasons why certain things work and certain things do not work for the students and the families that you are catering to. Next slide.
Okay, so I'll jump in on this one.
This is yours.
Yeah, I want to really underscore that with the practical ideas and strategies that we're sharing, this is not one size fits all, and nobody would expect you to do all of the things that we share. It's, think of this as a busy buffet, right? When you go to a buffet, you're going to walk past some things and say, this looks good to me. I'm going to take a little bit of this. Maybe there's something you see
Absolutely.
that you've never tried before, and you think, I'm going to take a teeny little piece of this and see how it goes down. And then you may pass something and go, forget it. No way, not for me, right? So don't feel overwhelmed by the number of things that we share. Contexts are all different. And that's partially why we're going to give you an opportunity now to rate some of these practical strategies. So I will share a strategy, and then you're going to vote with a number, basically. Number 1 is not practical, okay? So if I share something and you go, okay, maybe for somebody else, but not in my school, that's a 1. A 5 is the opposite of that, something that's very actionable. And in fact, you might even like to try it, okay? Or a number in between. Finally, 5+ means, yes, this is good, and I already do it. Now, we're going to be talking about virtual strategies mostly with this as well, keeping in mind that over the past, 2 years almost now, people have become so much more virtual. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Hosting virtual gatherings focused on building community and providing a space for families to learn more about what's happening in the school, to ask questions or to raise concerns. If you're already doing this, it's a 5+. If this seems very actionable and you'd like to try it, it's a 5. If this is not practical, it's a 1. Awesome, thank you.
And it could also be a number in between, right? So yes. If you were to consider the resources in your school, okay, maybe we can do this. I'll give it a 3 or 4. That's okay too.
And I'll give my own children's, one of their schools, I go to 2 different schools. One of them hosts regular town halls where now I would say they're also very practical, and they know that they have a very opinionated body of parents. So they request that the questions are submitted in advance. They look for themes across the questions, and then they address the questions in these virtual town halls. Whereas conversely, my other children's school does not do that, but they do have like virtual open mic talent nights, right? So different types of virtual gatherings. So grade this from a 1 to a 5+. What would you grade it as? And thank you.
And I think next time, like when we're doing this, I think we would probably differentiate for the different types of engagement, maybe using letters. So by the time they're using the numbers, there's not confusion. So number 1, maybe we can do A.
Yes.
So A1 or A5, A5+, yes. So
good idea. Love the feedback.
Yes, it's for for those that are also going to scaffold it down too, especially with online. In person, it may not matter so much, but online it may get a little confusing.
Yes, 100%.
I know for two, the gallery walk is not something I've really seen so much here, but I know it's something that I really loved as a teacher doing the gallery walks or presentation of student work. So especially if students are doing interesting projects, science-based, engineering, innovative projects, having space for them to showcase, and people just walk from place to place. Think of it like maybe a science fair or something, so you can do that also.
Now, let's think about this on a practical level, right? Connectivity is invariably an issue. So if you're a teacher who wants to do a virtual gallery walk, there's no reason why you can't do that, for example, off of your phone, and then post it to a private YouTube link and make it asynchronous. That way, parents, first of all, if you have a connection issue, right, while you're presenting, it doesn't create challenges. Likewise, if your parents are having a data issue, it doesn't create challenges for them. Even with these workshops, we've talked about pre-recording them so that if we run into connectivity issues, it doesn't create challenges. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one.
Sorry, Christine, for the sake of the participants, can we go back? If you can just a little bit more, like synchronous and asynchronous is not always the language we use here. If you can just talk about the difference between the two for engagement.
Absolutely. So synchronous engagement is what we are doing right now. It's when you're working online live with people. Asynchronous is when it's digital and online, but not necessarily happening at the same time. Now, as I've said, we created this slide looking broadly at what the technology can do, but we also know on a practical level, some of what's listed as synchronous may be better in your context as asynchronous.
Absolutely.
So that if you're doing a virtual gallery walk or presentation, you might pre-record that to ensure that you and your participants don't have problems related to connectivity. On the other hand, a virtual gathering, this is a virtual gathering, right? And we can see with the DG, because she's a presenter, she's got 2 internet sources going, and that's great. But as a participant, if you jump in and you jump out because of connectivity, that doesn't really create massive challenges. Likewise, if we jump down to number 3, so this is a way of bringing the community into school. In the Lagos context, I would make this asynchronous, actually. But think about the community members or the families. Could somebody give a virtual tour of, a factory in the community, a workplace in the community? And it doesn't have to be something extensive. It can be a 2-minute tour, a hospital, a medical center, a COVID testing facility, right?
Or even someone that's a fisherman or someone working in the market.
Totally.
Yes.
I mean, the market is a really interesting concept because my son and I were in Lagos last week, and we were talking about trading and how traders have 2 ways of making money, basically, right? One is to acquire items at a lower cost and sell them at a higher cost, or to add value to the items to sell them at a higher cost. You could have a trader even talk about how it is that they procure and then sell items. How do they price?
Absolutely.
Etc.
Absolutely. That would really be interesting, and put it maybe on a YouTube, send it on WhatsApp for, WhatsApp videos for people to be able to watch on their own, or you can watch it together and have a small lesson on it thereafter. So many ways. I really like, these practical ideas and strategy, because this is minimal. There's so much more. Even within this, as you say, there are ways in which we can even swap between the synchronous and the asynchronous. Whatever works for you most importantly for your learners and their families and community members.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to run through some of the asynchronous ideas that are here. One, this is less of a practical idea, but more of a consideration, acknowledging and understanding levels of access and potentially barriers to engagement on the part of parents. And we're going to do a little exercise around addressing challenges and barriers. Number 6 is really about housing information online for parents and making sure that they know how to access that, whether it's their children's schedule or even contact information for a teacher, or if there are hours where it's easier to contact a teacher. And how do you house that effectively online, right? There are plenty of free platforms that you can use where you can have parent and student logins. Or you could even simply just have a teacher's schedule posted onto a free microsite. Creating digital resources to explain some terminology. This is especially important if you have parents, for whom English is a second language. You may find that it's helpful, again, on a microsite or even through a QR code on homework to explain terminology, learning terminology in the words that parents might be more likely to use or connect it to their own experience. And I'll give you an example. I'm almost 50 years old, and the way I learned math was very, very different from the way children are taught math today. And as a teacher, when I would have to explain what parents my age often call the new math, right? That funny math that's so different, I would say, look, this is what we did. This is what the students are doing today, because I understand their context. And I can explain how they're similar and how they're different. And then finally, sharing available tutorials and platforms for any of the tools or resources that you are using. Now, on top of this, too, I know in Lagos State, we've met so many teachers who are actually creating their own YouTube tutorials for content that they're teaching in class. They're creating their own channels. And it's really amazing to see. Now, if you have a teacher who's doing that, you want to make sure that they're able to get that out to students and to parents through, for example, WhatsApp or Telegram platforms. So I'm going to ask you, as we pause here for just a moment, from the previous slide and from this slide, I want you to just jot down 2 or 3 practical things that you would actually like to try implementing in your school. Ways of engaging the community. It could come from this slide, it could come from the previous slide, but you really do need to take that moment to write this down, because the next thing that we're going to do is going to build on what you've written down. You can share it in the chat as well too, but the important thing is that you have it on paper.
So I think we'll just give a few minutes for people to think about how they can do that. I'll use myself as an example. For instance, I sometimes forget, because my children are involved in some activities, my younger daughter. So I asked the teacher to to let me know what time she's supposed to get out of school every day, because it's not the same time and I can't be racking my brain, so I just asked the teacher to send me the schedule. So this is not even a schedule of maybe work being done, but closing time, and she did that. So it's helpful for me too. It helps both of us. It ensures that my child is not there after hours and I'm able to plan for it also. But as a teacher, thinking through this and thinking through the needs of your families could also help you to be more proactive in doing some of this. Likewise, even if it is sharing the Lagos State's academic calendar with your parents also, right? The calendars are not just for the schools to put in one drawer, right? It's also for our stakeholders to be aware and to know that, okay, this midterm is coming up. School is going to start this time. School is going to end this time. This is open day and all of that. We want to, as a school, be providers of information. We don't want to hoard information. Okay, we want to be able to give information out so that there's a greater level of compliance and that things work smoothly. There's no confusion. People can plan accordingly. Okay, so I'm just give you a few more minutes to tackle that.
I just wrote in the chat, DJ, calendars. Oh my goodness. You know, we should maybe do a workshop actually on just how to create a free microsite for your school.
Absolutely.
Because it just putting up some of the basic information like calendars. I am, as a mother, I will tell you, and my son is sitting here next to me, an absolute mess, right? If you were to call me and say, when is their next break? When is their last day before the winter holidays? I would literally have to Google search the school and put in the word calendar.
That's very true.
It's there, right? I know I can find it, and that helps. On the other hand, I can say about both of my children's schools, one of them, if I log into the parent portal, and we're lucky we have a parent portal there, I can see his schedule. My other one, who's sitting next to me right now, I don't have a clue. I have no idea what his schedule looks like.
Exactly. So even for some people that don't even have so much access to technology, even if it's just having a PDF version of maybe what you just typed and the students have, like when their examinations are. So for instance, I think as at last week, one of my children's schools sent me the examination timetable. So I know that we need to plan for studying more and to prep them ahead of the examination, making sure. So it's good when people have timely access to information. It's very good.
And I'm going to share something else too from a school leader standpoint. You know, we talk to school leaders all of the time, and the general consensus of most school leaders, and especially private school leaders, is, are you kidding me? Do I not already provide enough information to these families? I send them newsletters. They don't read them. I send them emails. They don't read them. When you store the information that parents need, right? Maybe it's PDFs of those newsletters on a microsite, or even in Telegram. Telegram is great for storing content. Schedules, holidays, exams, etc. When those parents come to you and they say, you never sent me. Oh, really? Oh, really? I never sent you? But you know, you can find it on Telegram. You know, you can find it on our microsite. So, because, you know, parents are, and I'm a parent, I know, and Gigi, you are too. We know how it is. They do it. They try. The schools do everything they can. They send the newsletters. They send the emails. Do we read them? Sometimes. You know? So I am both a critic and a confessor in this case. So if you keep it all in a microsite, those parents can't get you with that. Okay. And part of it is actually what we know about learning. Right? We need to have a reason to learn.
Sorry, Miss Christina. I also wanted to add on to the fact, because I know that not everyone within their school context is really using technology. There's so much level variance when it comes to resource levels. So even if you are, if you need to keep things manual, where you have like maybe a parent communication folder. I really liked that when my children were younger, they got that. So there's like a parents communication folder, and that folder goes home weekly, and you have to bring it back, I think every Wednesday or so. And all the information goes inside, and the child will offload the information at home and come back with an empty folder. So even if you don't have, or if your parents don't have access to a lot of technology. There's still manual ways that you can use to ensure that they have access to the information they're supposed to have.
Absolutely. And an alternative to that is student learning diaries. And you can just paste the schedule into the diary. Pardon my my voice.
Exactly. A lot of schools, I believe, even still do that. But you know what? What I've noticed that sometimes the things we do for them at the primary level, I think they get to secondary school and we just assume that it's no longer needed, that they're older. But I would beg to differ that they still need that. Of course, it would look different, and the older children can be held more accountable, but you still need a means in which information is formally going home, and you know that that it has been received at home.
Awesome. I think we're going to move on to the next slide here, because what we want to do is spend a few minutes talking about what this might look like in your school development plan. So we asked you to take a moment to consider 3 practical ideas. They don't have to be complicated ideas, 3 practical ideas that you can use from this workshop to drive engagement. And we want to make sure that you have those written down. So we've shared a lot. And like I said, they don't need to be complicated. It could be, as the DG said, as simple as having a folder or having a notebook that has some of this information in it, pardon me, that goes back and forth to school every day. Or it could be using Telegram to house important information, or it could be asking community members to send in workplace videos. 3 simple ideas that you can implement at your school. And then we'll go on to the next slide, or the slide I think after the next slide. Ms. Fauzia, can you advance to the next one? Okay, so it's important that you're able to think about what might this look like in an action plan. When you're writing your school development plan, you have the 3 main areas of standards for your school development plan. And the third one is leadership. So community engagement really should fit within your school development plan for leadership. If we go to the next slide. So you may want to think about, what if you are putting into action, let's see, do you have an example actually, DG, that you like from this workshop that we could just talk through?
Yes, let me just take a look really quickly. I like the making individual contact with every family and developing a communication plan. So okay. Typically maybe in the beginning of the session, figuring out what works best in terms of communication for the different parents or family members for students in the classroom.
Okay, awesome. So, and what I love about that is you can do it regardless of your level of resources now.
Absolutely.
No one's going to lie. Absolutely. It's going to be a lot harder if you have a very large class size, right? But that, I always think of Miss Fauzia at her Ebenezer Church School with her 70 children, and that's not an abnormal number in some contexts. But still, how would somebody like her go about doing this, or how might a teacher at a school with fewer students go about doing this? It might not look the same.
I think another way in which this could maybe be done at the administrative level, as against the teacher level. So maybe I know for like SUBEB, or in the case of private schools where students are paying school fees before the first day of school, they have to sort of register their students. At the point of registration, you could actually get this information also and then distribute it to your parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, for example, then the action plan in this case, let's imagine we are a mid-size, mid-cost private school. And our vision there is to better meet the needs of parents by understanding their preferred communication. So what will success look like? Okay, one is improved parent communication survey results, right? This would assume the school already does some form of surveying parents. Another key performance indicator or KPI could be teachers are able to easily contact parents, right? They need to be able to understand what the parent phone number, for example, would be. And those are two very simple KPIs. A third simple KPI would be complete contact records for every child. So what would the strategic actions be then? So one might be to incorporate a communication survey into fee collection as number one. Who would be responsible for that? Perhaps if you're lucky enough to have a registrar, it would be that person or the administrative staff. Milestone checks. Is this something that's achieved or ongoing? Working with schools and parents, I know that's never a simple matter. It's never done very quickly. And the monitoring, evaluation, and impact, it might be a monthly records check. Now, with that survey, one would hope that you would be able to get a general pulse of your school overall, right? What is it that the parents prefer as a mode of communication? And I think these days, a lot of parents actually prefer WhatsApp because it's just-in-time information. You get it when you need it. But you would be able to say, look, we've asked you as parents, and this is what you've said. Then the teacher or the administrative team, if they need to contact a parent, can actually look this up and say, okay, Christine prefers WhatsApp because she travels a lot. It may be hard to get her by phone, but I can send her a WhatsApp on this number. Another strategic action then might be to share contact details, parent contact details with teachers if this is appropriate. A third might be to house information on a microsite so that parents who are not easily able to contact can still get the information that they require. So you want to think about, what would this look like? What would you need to do to make it happen? My big thing is that, to be able to really communicate effectively with parents, you need to have their contact details. If you don't have the contact details, how can you communicate?
So
updated,
also a level, exactly. So also having in place a system that they can update it maybe at any time. So maybe when you are confirming that this is the information you've given us, if at any time there's a change, please fill out this, click on this link to fill in updated information, or maybe at certain times. So when children have a break at the end of the term, maybe that's a time where they need to update. So if the information remains the same, they don't need to update. But if there's any change, even in level of priority, so maybe before WhatsApp worked well, but now text message works better, that update should be done, and who the parent needs to contact. That's also very helpful. If the parent knows, okay, tell the head teacher, contact or send an email to the head teacher, or come to the school, fill out a form, so they know how. Because it's not that parents don't know when their information changes. They know, but they need to know what the process is, and then we hold them accountable as a result of that.
Fantastic. Thank you, DG. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so there are challenges and barriers to sustaining parental engagement. And what we want to do is actually have you engage in some of the brainstorming around this. So we'd like each of you to pick a challenge. One might be parents are unable to attend school meetings or events due to schedule conflicts, or parents are unable to attend school meetings or events due to no transportation. I'm sure that's a big one. Parents are uncomfortable at meetings. Some parents have very bad memories of school, and school is not a happy place for them. Parents do not fully understand the information provided by the school. It could be a language barrier, it could be other issues. And then finally, number 5, school staff are not experienced or trained to work with parents and have trouble sustaining positive relationships. So We want you each to pick one challenge, write the number of the challenge, i.e. Parents are unable to attend school meetings or events due to no transportation. So you would write the number 2, and what's a solution? What's a practical idea you have that can address that challenge? We'll take, let me see here, time-wise, about 4 minutes here. We want to see as many ideas as possible.
Yes, I think we're doing pretty well with time. And I know we're focusing on parents' engagement, but I think further after this workshop, I think it's good for us to also think about this with the lens for community engagement also, you know. But of course, when we're working directly with parents as teachers, this is our first and a very important stakeholder. So we should have this down packed, I would say, before, before even cementing our community engagement, I think at the teacher level, at least that directly impacts student learning.
Definitely. Yeah, as I
know
said,
some schools also have like a parents coordinator. You know, some schools will also have like a parent, not that the parent coordinator would do everything, but the parent coordinator will maybe just serve as the strategic back end to make sure those things are being done and to make sure that they're not left unattended. Because sometimes, like I said earlier on, we tend to, there's so many things we need to prioritize during the day, and understandably so. So we have to have a way of checkmating ourselves and ensuring that this does not go to the back burner, and that we're being, you know, intentional about our parent engagement.
I've just added one just to show you how simple this is. Write down the number and then a solution. I just wrote down number 1. Parents are unable to attend school meetings or events due to schedule conflicts. Simple solution, record events. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, as they say. So we want to see your ideas, your solutions here in the chat.
I also added something here. So I mentioned this before. Sometimes for number 4, where parents do not fully understand information, you can translate correspondence or have a translator present for people who may not literally understand. There's literal understanding and there's another type of understanding. For that literal understanding, something as simple as translation may work. I definitely like writing good news about each term and having it done at a set time. Ms. Fauzia, can you help us to get participants?
Okay, very well, ma. Okay, so this is the time we're expecting engagement from our participants, and I'll be calling randomly on our participants to please engage with the activities. So the first activity, they want to know challenges and barriers sustaining parent engagement. And number 1, parents are unable to attend school meetings, events due to schedule conflicts. So may I call on Mr. Akim Bello? You may unmute yourself and let us know what solution you prefer to any of these challenges? Mr. Frederick, Mr. Jalili, Alayaki. Okay, somebody has a hand raised. Ms. Oluwake. Okay, Mr. Frederick, please go ahead, sir. What solution will you prefer to any of these challenges? Hello, Mr. Frederick, can you hear us?
You can use a Zoom meeting.
Pardon?
You can use Zoom meeting, virtual Zoom meeting.
Okay, for what number are you talking about, sir?
Maybe either number 1 or 2. If they are unable to attend due to schedule conflict or transportation, then use Zoom meeting or virtual meeting. They will attend and get their information.
Okay, thank you. Dijima, would you like to respond to that, ma'am? Mr. Frederick has said the solution to number 2, parents are unable to attend school meetings or events due to no transportation. He has suggested that they could do a virtual meeting, like using Zoom.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good one. And I think we've even learned in our own office how helpful that could often be, so. I like some of the responses we're getting, creating a WhatsApp group to just say, as if we don't have enough, but it is helpful. WhatsApp group to disseminate important information, invite parents to, I'm trying to just read, parents unable to attend meetings due to schedule conflict, need to consider market days. So this is another thing in terms of gathering information. We need to have a pulse on what is going on. And we need to have a way in which we can get that information. Okay. So maybe we're sending out some sort of feedback form at the end of every meeting or something, or on a quarterly basis, what they would like to see more of, what would be more helpful. For instance, as an office, we've really learned to not really have meetings on Fridays to accommodate those that have to go to mosque. And then I know also with the market days when it comes to school, for instance, parents, like open days, I think we had to consider that for having open day. So we worked with that for the universal calendar, thinking through what days parents would be more free. And we're not just thinking of one set of parents, we're thinking about all. So you can imagine as a government, what it's like to try to reasonably come up with policies for everyone that has various level of need, while still maintaining flexibility, while still ensuring compliance. So I think at the school level and teacher level, it's a similar process that has to be done.
Okay, very well, Ma. Thank you. I want to read a comment from our YouTube channel. I know that we people are watching us live from YouTube, and we have a contribution from Ezra Ayelagbe. Thank you. Sorry if I didn't get your name well. She says some of the solutions she proffered was 1, communication plan with each parent. And then she says a system to document home parameters that might impact learning, and then giving virtual tours or gallery walk. So we have that comment right from our YouTube channel.
Thank you so much for the contributions. Ms. Christine?
All right, it's always exciting to know that sometimes I forget we're live on YouTube. Okay, let's progress. I think this has been good to see people's thoughts and ideas. As I mentioned at the outset of this workshop, this is an abridged version. All of these workshops are available in terms of the slides and the run sheets. Run sheets you can think of as a guide. They're all available on LagosLearnsTogether.com, where there are additional case studies. I actually think we might be using the version of the deck right now that does have the case studies, but we're not going to have time to go through the case studies in this workshop. The case studies go a little bit more into the aspects of community engagement that support public-private partnerships. Let's go into the next slide here. Yeah, so I think the last question that I would ask you all to reflect on, and then potentially to go to Lagos Learns Together and look at the case studies, is what needs do you have as a school, right, to shift gears from parents to businesses that could be supported by a local business? And in addition to that, what skills or competencies could a business be able to offer your school that could benefit your school community? So just take a moment to reflect on that. And Ms. Fazia, maybe you could call on one or two people to share some examples of needs that they have as a school that could be supported by a business, or competencies or skills that businesses could offer their the school community.
Okay, very well, ma'am. So this is for school leaders now. This is an opportunity you have to contribute. We want to know what needs do you have as a school that could be supported by business. May I please call on Ms. Oluwakemi Oluwaguna? You have your hands raised. Please unmute yourself and let us know. You can give us examples or case studies of what needs do you have as a school that could be supported by business. Okay, we have Mrs. Oguntoye Ayodele, Mrs. Olarewaju, or is it Mr. Olarewaju? Mr. Olarewaju Majakodumi. Can you please unmute yourself? If you're not ready, Ms. Oguntoye Ayodele.
So remember, there's always something, like I said, ask these questions time. We actually are doing these things, we're processing this information, we just haven't organized them in a certain way. Surely you can think of ways in which your school could be supported by local business. It could be in terms of resources, it could be in terms of maybe skill set. Maybe you need someone to coach students, maybe you need someone to help with face mask, whatever it is. There are various ways in which we can think even more creatively about the ways in which businesses can support the needs of our students, even if the business offers like a resource. I remember when my children were younger, and I in some schools and discussion, even to like Domino's. You'll be maybe wondering, what are they doing there? They'll go and see the process in which pizza is made and everything, you know. So there are even opportunities for learning for students that you can use to partner. Not everything is always going to be like a cash support. Sometimes it's just in terms of the resources. If maybe there's someone in a business that has done really well when it comes to a certain field, maybe that person can come to speak to students or come to train teachers, right? So like I said, if we were to spend more time, I'm sure you all know but really thinking through and delving into a systematic way about these skills and competencies and connecting them to the community counterparts, I think is probably where the heavy lifting is just needed.
Okay. So please, Mr. Akim Bello, if you hear your name, many of you can please unmute yourself. Miss Amzat Olatunde, Mrs. Jolayemi Sarah Gbemisola, Miss Oguntoye Ayodele. Hello, sir. Okay, there seems to be a lot of background noise coming from Mr. Akim Bello's device. We may not be able to take your comments. Mrs. Jolayemi Sarah Gbemisola.
So I'll say I love the comment that we have from Olukunle Bankole. In the area of ICT development, a school can partner with an ICT tech company to train the learners. And I think that's definitely, you need to know who you have in your community, who are those businesses, who can help you, right? You may not have access to technology, but do you have a company nearby who can bring in some of their technology to run a mini workshop, for example? So just knowing what are the assets in your community. When I was doing my physical training, 20 years ago, almost, no, 15 years ago, one of the activities that we had to do was just build a resource of our community, right? Just an Excel sheet. Who was out there? What were the businesses? What did they do? So that we would know who we could engage with further. I know that we are over time, and I'd like to thank everyone for staying in this. Oh, wow, we've got a great comment here from, let's see, Khadijat Adedeji,
amazing.
entrepreneurial
Yes.
skills. That is how people in different businesses can come to schools and give a talk for 20 to 25 minutes on a Wednesday, and then offer apprenticeship training. That's great. Another way you can do that too is, pre-recorded talks, if you're trying to limit exposure, for example, due to COVID. And then you can even have family entrepreneurship challenges. That could be something quite fun to do. So I'm going to basically hit pause on this. I think, DG, as we are about 10 minutes over, if we could wrap up here, that's probably the best thing to do. And we'll post the slides to together.
Okay. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking of, I think there's one chart. Is it the KWL or something like that, where, where you were thinking before, what you're thinking now, what you've learned or something. Okay, so think through this entire workshop. We've made it to the end and we're a little bit over, and thank you for making this journey with us. We're 88 people strong. So how has your thinking changed? Engagements, parental engagement, and partnerships. Like I said, this information, at the heart of it, there are things you already know, there are things you experience, but how can we more systematically tackle this and make sure that we're intentional about it being embedded in the wonderful work that we do? Okay, so I want you to use this following routine to reflect on your thinking. So what did you used to think, right? I used to think and I now think. Miss Christine, is it more of the KWL chart we're working for here? Or I used to think this, now I think this.
Yeah,
right?
So this is actually a protocol that we use to basically establish learning. And it's a strategy you can use in the classroom. It's also a strategy you can use with adults. And it's simply, I used to think and now I think. So how has your thinking shifted as a result of
and
this
it could
workshop?
be about anything.
Anything. I mean,
exactly.
Hopefully connected to the workshop on some level.
Yes. No, anything within the workshop. Anything within the workshop. Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a great habit. I find the first time people do I used to think and now I think, it can feel a little bit awkward, but once people get in the habit of doing it, it becomes a very, very quick way of driving reflection and learning. So I might say, I think
it could be very useful in the classroom also, especially when you're introducing a new topic or a topic presented in a different way. Okay. So make sure you're using that template. I used to think this, now I think this. On the shift that has occurred.
So I've just typed an example into this.
Yes. So Ms. Christine has written, I used to think that parental engagement was only for primary students, but now I think all families and students can benefit from it. Absolutely. So if we can get more of the I used to think, now I think, and think through the entire workshop as we're talking about the role of the teacher, the role of administrators, especially the role of the teacher when it comes to parental and community engagement. Ms. Fauzia, if you can help us to cold call our last few participants.
Okay. So we want to know what I used to think and now I think. So can I please call on Mr. Akim Bello? Mr. Akim Bello, can you please unmute yourself? Let us know what you used to think and what you think now after you've after this workshop, after being a participant here. Mr. Amzat Olatunde. Okay, Mr. Akim Bello.
Yeah, good morning, ma.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I'm glad to be part of this workshop. It has really affected my approach to some of these community engagement and what I feel about the school activities. There are areas where assistance are needed in the school. Going about it at times might look somehow, but now I have a better idea of how to go about it.
Thank you, sir, for your contribution. He said he used to think he used to think about some things, how to go about school, and now I think he can organize himself well as a school leader. Ms. Julian Adebayo said something in the chat box that she used to think parental and community engagement is only for the leadership of the school. But now I know the class teacher can also take part. And then Ms. Mariam Omoyele used to think that it's okay to just use only class WhatsApp platform to pass information to parents. But now she thinks it's okay to establish communication plan that each parent prefers. So these are some of the comments we are having. Ms. Okelaya used to think that parental meeting is just to inform us on what we are expected to do. But now she thinks and knows that it is more than that. Thank you so much for all the comments. So that's what we have in the chat box, ma'am.
Okay. I think it looks really good, and I want to thank you all for your participation today. Mrs. Nasser Gotzi, thank you, despite the time difference, for making it to today's session. Thank you for the entire OEQA team. Oh, sorry, I've gone before. Have we met our objectives?
Oh, that's goodness. Okay. We can, I think
we can close out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So remember that all of the information here is available or will be available on LagosLearnsTogether.com. And as this is being live streamed on our OEQA Lagos channel on YouTube, you can always go back there to go over these sessions again. Remember, this is just a minimal, this is just minimally what we expect of you. Of course, if you are scaffolding this, you will go above and beyond what we've given today. It's a minimal standard that we've set here for you to be able to ensure that you can support your schools, your school leaders, your teachers, those that work with students on parental and family and communal engagement. So, as we close off, I want to thank you all for staying the course, even though we've gone over time today and we still have over 80 participants at almost 2 hours later. So I want to thank you. And we do know that these series are slowly coming to an end. I want you to ensure that you're keeping up to date on oeqalagos.com for the most up-to-date information on these sessions or any information regarding the Office of Education Quality Assurance, Ministry of Education, Lagos State. Thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful remainder of your day. God bless you.
Yes, DG Map, but before you close finally, we have just one question. I don't know if you'd like to take it before we go. Somebody wanted to know if it's important to allow parents communicate with teachers directly. Okay, is it good for leadership of school not to allow parents to communicate directly to parents?
So this has to be established. So it varies, okay? And I understand where sometimes it may not be good for parents to directly contact the teacher. So there has to be established protocols as to what that is, because at the end of the day, you want to protect the teacher and you want to protect the parent. Sometimes if a request or a complaint or whatever have you is not made formally, like in writing, sometimes it's difficult to keep track of. Sometimes it's difficult to ensure that the right person gets to it. So at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that the procedures are done well so that cases are treated appropriately. Another thing is sometimes maybe if the teacher is not really well skilled at parental engagement, they don't want to give wrong information that the parents can now hold on to, right? So it's important for the school to have established protocols as to how that is to be done, and then they can move forward from there. Some places, teachers are very well skilled and very well trained on what the protocols are when it comes to either taking things within the classroom or handling things outside of the classroom and where they should be escalated to. So sometimes the burden, what teachers are able to do. So for instance, a set school may decide that the only informal communication would have to do with maybe assignments or things that are directly within the realms of the classroom, and any other thing has to be sent to the principal, to the head teacher, and that type of thing. So I really think it does depend on the school. It's several things that inform that situation. But what is most important is that there are avenues at which that could be done. So for instance, if I'm a parent and I've sent emails, I've called and things are not working, I may decide to just request for a physical meeting to ensure that my needs are being met in that way, So there should be ways in which parents can engage with the teacher and or school leadership towards the need for them to advocate for their children. It should be established.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am. I hope that has answered the question that we had from that participant. And that'll be all for now from the Q&A session, DG, ma'am.
Okay, Miss Christine, any last words for now?
Sorry, I was checking to make sure, see if I was on mute. No, thank you so much. I love how people engaged. The program came at the right time, but how can one access the material after? We will add this to Lagos Learns together today, and you can also find it on the YouTube channel.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Ms. Fauzia, that you're able to keep track of all of the comments. We are also working on feedback forms so that we can get feedback on how to, better serve you and make sure that we are more accurately attending to your needs. So keep updated on that on the OEQA Lagos Learns Together website as well. Once we have that segmented, we will let you know. Thank you all and have a wonderful day. God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.